Every summer, the remote town of Nome in Alaska is the center of a modern-day gold rush.
Gold mining is one of the most challenging and competitive businesses out there, but it gets even more complicated when the gold is underwater, and in one of the most dangerous places in the world. That's the case of Discovery's Bering Sea Gold, which season after season has given us a deep insight into Alaska's dredging and gold digging industry, and all the drama going on with everyone involved in it. Nonetheless, while the relationships between miners and the competitiveness proper of the business are one of the main attractive points of the show, what actually keeps us loyally tuning in to Bering Sea Gold are the personal and inspiring stories of its cast, especially in the case of fan favorites such as George Young. So, who is George? What's going on with his health? Why is he in a wheelchair? And what does George do when he's not searching for gold in the Bering Sea? Stay here to learn all of the answers. One of the most common questions regarding George is about his health, and the reason he's in a wheelchair nowadays. As explained in his debut, aired in the 8th season, George was severely injured in a car accident that took place back in 2001. However, not much is known about the situation surrounding the incident, or whether he was the only one injured in it, only that it resulted in his paraplegic condition. Though most of the time George uses his wheelchair for his everyday life activities, he sometimes gets out of it to board his ship or dive, as viewers of Bering Sea Gold have seen many times since his debut in the show in 2016. Of course, it's very unfortunate that George has been going through many difficult moments in his life, but he hasn't let those hardships stop him. Given his physical disability, it might come as a surprise to see George Young diving in some Bering Sea Gold episodes. Nonetheless, he's fearless when it comes to mining, even regardless of what his family has to say about it. As seen in one of his early appearances in Bering Sea Gold, George's brother, Dave Young, was quite apprehensive about him going under the water and doing what he thought was necessary to get the gold. He tells me, "You don't need to dive. That's what there are divers for. Let them dive." And that's just not me. "I'm gonna dive," he said in front of cameras. While George's diving escapades are of big help for his mining operation, he isn't the only one in the team who can get underwater to save the day. As he affirmed during a 2017 interview with TV Megasite, "I had 2 divers on this season to help make this whole thing happen. 4 divers altogether, but only 2 divers on the boat at one time," George said, referring to his 8th season, which had just wrapped up at the time. All in all, George has had a good team all along, but he's certainly not afraid of getting his feet wet, so to speak, to make his dreams come true. As said during George Young's earliest appearances in the show, the fact he made it to the Bering Sea with the boat ready to find gold under the water is mostly because of his brother Dave, who also appears in the show. As it happens, the latter was doing so well in the mining business that he lent George enough money to set up his operation, though that also meant that initially every ounce of gold retrieved by George was passed over to Dave to pay off his debt. While that might seem a good deal for a once rookie captain such as George, it also meant that his mining efforts were fruitless money-wise for quite a while. "There's no money, it's all gone. The plan was to buy the gold dredge for my brother, and that takes more than 1 season to achieve," as George told TV Megasite after the 8th season wrapped up in 2017. That being said, it is unknown how much exactly George did owe his brother, but nowadays, he's still mining from his old All About Nuggets boat, just as he did in earlier seasons. While it isn't rare to see reality stars having lots of experience in their field before being cast in a TV show, it was a different story for George Young, as he admitted in an interview with the Tim Laskus Show on YouTube. Around 2013, he grew interested in underwater gold thanks to Bering Sea Gold. With high hopes of finding gold and making it big, George's brother Dave joined a friend who had set up a mining operation in the Bering Sea, but needed extra help after running out of money. They had a good time mining for 1 season, so encouraging George to join them too. Nonetheless, life had different things prepared for the brothers. As George was still in the process of learning what mining was all about, and had his first experiences at diving and dredging gold, Dave was doing better on the business side. He went big. He got in with a few investors and they bought a barge, George explained in the podcast. From then on, Dave's operations expanded and eventually allowed him to lend the money, which allowed George to start his mining adventure as well. As someone who discovered mining in the Bering Sea through a TV show, it's quite normal that George only really learned a thing or two about the business after getting into it himself. As he affirmed in an interview with the podcast The Tim Laskus Show, a good way of starting in mining is by contacting someone who has experience in it and either hiring them or boarding their boats. Nonetheless, when such a thing isn't possible, there's nothing better than to risk it all for a dream just as he did. Your first year, you're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna go home broke, but hopefully you learned enough for your second year, he said. Underwater mining is a challenging and unique experience in itself, which usually requires more than just a strong will. It's a very difficult thing to do, not only physically, but mentally. I don't believe it's for everybody, but it's an awesome adventure if you're up for it, George said in an interview with TV Megasite in 2017. All in all, there seems to be lots of aspects to take into consideration before giving mining or dredging a try. But that doesn't make it an impossible goal. Underwater mining is no joke, especially when it takes place in an isolated island and special place, such as Alaskan waters. There are lots of aspects to consider to keep oneself safe in that environment, and George Young is deeply aware of that. As he affirmed in an interview with TV Megasite, the first and foremost thing to be aware of while searching for gold in the Bering Sea is the weather, and knowing when it's the right time to get underwater or just leave the job for another day to avoid accidents. Such a warning doesn't come as a surprise for loyal viewers of Bering Sea Gold, as not only George but the entire cast are always cautious in roaming the seas when there are signs of storms ahead. Having the equipment in top-notch condition is also essential to get the job done, though he also insists that knowing the surroundings is also especially important for divers, who should be careful not to get their breathing line wrapped up around objects such as the dredging hose and anchors. That being said, divers in Bering Sea Gold don't use dry suits to go underwater, so having a wetsuit to keep themselves warm while swimming in Alaska's extremely cold seawater is a very important part of the job. Before Bering Sea Gold, George was a stranger to the TV industry. It was around the time he first gave underwater mining a try in 2013 that he came into contact with a talent scout looking for miners to appear in the show, though it took several years to finally convince them to give him a chance in the show, as he said in an interview with The Tim Laskus Show on YouTube. Despite all the hardships his job inherently involved, the experience of appearing on TV was very welcome for George and definitely worth the wait as it exceeded his expectations. As George also admitted in the podcast, not only was he amazed by the special attention the production put into every detail while creating the show, but he also wasn't afraid of doing what it takes to be in it, something he realized after filming one scene several times at a cameraman's request. He's like, "You signed up for this." That's when it kicked in. I realized I did sign up for this. If you want us to pull that anchor and throw it again, we will definitely do it. All in all, George is quite committed to mining, but also to being a TV star. Mining is an important part of George's life, but it's not the only thing he loves. As seen on his social media, George is an avid fisherman and outdoorsman, often taking advantage of bad weather days in Alaska to indulge in his hobbies, even on the sea instead of working. George is also quite good at snow sports, saying in an interview with TV Megasite in 2017 that he belongs to an Aspen-based ski team as a sit racer, on top of also enjoying snowmobiling. "I'm in the mountains. I'm just all over the place, truthfully. I'm just an adrenaline junkie as much as possible. I just love adventure." Clearly, George loves being outdoors and just enjoying life to the fullest. When George Young debuted in Bering Sea Gold, he didn't do it all alone. By his side was always his brother Dave, who lent him money to pursue his mining goals in the beginning. As George struggled to pay off his debts, Dave was expanding his mining operations and doing business with other well-known miners. Such was the case of Ken Kerr, who owned the dredge boat known as Myrtle Irene and is a long-time Bering Sea Gold cast member. In recent times, things haven't been going well for Kerr though, as in 2019, a lawsuit was filed against him and his company, Arctic Sea Mining LLC, for an accident which involved 3 minor girls whose car was hit by a steel cable attached to the Myrtle Irene. As read in the lawsuit, the teens were asking for $100,000 in damages as they were apparently severely injured during the accident. Although it's unclear what happened to the case, Ken was eventually left out of Bering Sea Gold. Dave is not only still in the show, but is also apparently still involved with Arctic sea mining. If there's something we have learned about recent Bering Sea Gold seasons, it's that George Young is there to stay. After several years in the show, George passed from being a rookie miner who appeared from time to time on screen to becoming a fan favorite who has more than a safe spot in the cast for the time being. To prove this, George is part of the Bering Sea Gold's 15th season premiering in December 2022. The news of his participation in the show was announced by himself through his Facebook page, which also lets us see that filming for the season had begun in June of that year. Besides the joy of seeing George back again on screen, fans of the show were grateful to know new episodes were premiering at the time, as no announcement about Bering Sea Gold renewal has been made since the 14th season wrapped up in late 2021. However, how far will George and the other miners go this time to reach their gold-searching goals? That's yet to be discovered. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpicked these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.